Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Island Stat Sports Show. I'm your host, Earl Baston. Joining me is co-host Jason Juggler J. Ford. And this evening, Jay, we are joined by the coaches of the Bermuda Football Association who will lead our men's and women's team into battle in the Island Games in less than 3 weeks' time. We have Coach Kita as well as John Barry Newsom. First of all, thank you very much for joining us. We just want to be able to, give you guys an opportunity to talk about, preparation, team selection, expectations, and the whole gamut about the Island Games, in tonight's show. But Jay, what are you hoping to hear tonight?
Well, Earl, you just wrapped you said mostly everything in your intro, right? It's just some of the things that, first and foremost, expectations when we come to young people. We have a lot of high expectations based on potential, and it's always good to see what happens when potential meets opportunity, but also when hard work is involved in it. And these coaches will know who's tuned in and who's not tuned in. Now we could sit back and say name off all these players who think we should be on a team, but these coaches are the ones who know who come to train and who's given the effort that's needed to reach those heights. And so unfortunately, that's the world we live in. We go off a lot of hearsay and whatever, but now we've got the two people who are in charge. We can get away from the horse's mouth, as they say.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump right to you, Coach Kita, because of course, well, your team came out on Monday. Unfortunately, John, yours came out after. So we're gonna start. We're gonna start
Ladies
on
first. Ladies first.
yeah, ladies first. Coach, it's good to see someone like Jaden Masters back into the field. We saw her at our last international competition, having to be carried off the field. But looking at the selection of your team, do you feel as if it is as balanced as you've possibly had it over the years?
Actually, it's probably one of the best teams that we have at our disposal this time around, and I mention that often to the players and let them know that, like, guys, this is the team I feel that can actually get the job done. Based off of what we've seen in training, based off of our overseas and our local base players. I've gone and watched the women's league as well, and I think that we're excited as coaches with the players that we have to use in this tournament, and because it's kind of a back to back to back, we are very happy with the quality of players that we have to select from. It's been a while since, and if ever, we've been able to say, you know what, we could look down this bench and say, oh, okay, she's got to come off, she's exerted. We could bring on another player and be comfortable knowing that player that comes on, we're not going to skip a beat. So team selection wasn't that difficult. We had one player who obviously, two players, Nia Christopher and Aaliyah Nolan, who's unavailable, one through injury, one through in season. But, we're very happy with who we have to select from. And, Deshae Darrow is back into the field as well, leading the girls for Women's League, always been a powerful player. So, yeah, we're happy. We're excited about who it is that we have to choose from.
I'm glad you mentioned the two that were unable to be in the team, but looking at them, I mean, they bring another dimension to, if they are available, to make that squad even stronger. And it's good to have Deshae Darrow back into the field. She's been missing for quite some time, but now that she's, I think, falling back in love with football, how much does that add to the team?
Oh, I mean, she's a proper number 9. We haven't had one in a while. And, I went and watched her play in the first women's league game. And she, I was like, wow, she scored a hat trick. And it's like, she kind of looked over to the side. She's like, what, am I good enough now? And, we have a bit of banter. We've had it for a while, and I used to say to her, like, I'm upset with you. And I'm not, I used to tell her I'm upset because I can't select you because you're not showing that you want to be selected. It was never like, I'm upset with you because you're past it. So, it was exciting. And then the next game, she scored again and she gave the look, and I was like, okay, yeah, you're coming in for an interview. But her name, we had discussed her. We had discussed her prior to that first match because she had been back to training with the Somerset team. And with Nia not being available, was like, it was almost like a godsend. So yeah, it is exciting. She's strong. We know she can strike the ball. She has a good touch. Her runs off the ball are amazing. It brings something totally different to what we have seen in our recent teams.
Yeah, and I'm going to quickly jump to John Barry. John, the team that you selected, I probably said over the last week, I haven't seen this many or a team like this put together for a number of years at a young age, older age. Having the opportunity to select so many guys who are, off island, in semi-pro setups and the like. How difficult was it to leave, if you have left anyone out?
It was extremely difficult. So I'll be honest with you, we have 20 that's going on this trip, but easily it's another 20 to 25 players that could make a claim to say, hey, I could have got into that last few spots. So to be honest, it was extremely hard. And the best thing for me and what excites me is that the players that didn't make the squad actually gave us a lot of cause for pause, meaning, we were looking at them saying, it's a matter of inches of why certain players didn't make the squad versus other players making the squad. And that's what you want, is a bigger pool of players, so that at any moment, someone that comes in that you may look at as, he's the 24th or 25th player, he could actually make the difference in the game as the starting 11, because that's how much competition was in this particular group. And the group between, let's say, 20 and 25 is a massive group of talented players. So for us as coaches, it was exciting to kind of start that process. And the process took a long time, I'll be honest with you. So over a year plus of kind of narrowing it down and kind of figuring out, who jobs with who, how does it work, things along their side. So it was extremely tough from our side as far as just selecting a 20.
Sure.
That's why the girls came out first, because I said, I ain't ready for this yet.
Not a problem, Jay.
Yeah.
It's amazing you just said, and I think people don't understand. You just mentioned about a year, right? Trying to just narrow down a team. And what we've seen, and Coach Keita, we've talked about it prior on other shows, but we've been going through a transition probably the last 5 years in our local football, where we have a home base and a foreign based team, basically, right? Yeah. And it's hard for coaches trying to get a training camp, obviously through COVID and the invention of Zoom, a lot of players, coaches have been able to keep in touch with a lot of players. But John, we've heard from Keita over the past few shows, but tell us some of the challenges for you trying to not only want to keep up with who's abroad, but also to see if they inform and if they can actually, you mentioned it, how they're able to gel with what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and that's the toughest part is years ago when I was playing in the squad, mostly everybody lived in Bermuda. So you were pretty close to everybody. You was always in contact. Training sessions were easier to put on. But if I look at my team, at least more than half the team is not located in Bermuda, which is a beautiful thing for the country and the players. But however, if you're talking about putting a national team together, there's a lot of small bits and pieces that can go missing. And for me, the biggest part is the gelling, making sure that it's a team that can gel together, making sure it's a team that once you put them out there, it's just not a paper team like you're playing FIFA on PlayStation. Like it's something that actually works. And so the biggest challenge, again, is just you don't have the physical player in front of you to get your own ideas of them. And a lot of it is coming from other individuals who you have to trust, giving you decent information on the players and where they are. Fitness is a big part of it, because now, we have tracking systems now where we can track, how much distances they're covering, how the fitness levels are, which makes it a little bit easier. But again, that's a new process as far as the technology goes. So it's about learning all the little details and trying to get as close as you can to a decent product to put on the pitch.
Coach Keita, when we've been putting together this particular team, you have a balance of people who are in school over in the UK and locally. Now that we have a women's league back up and running, where do you think our strengths in this team, the areas in our strengths, will come from?
It's a good question, right? So obviously our players that's coming from overseas are bringing a different mentality. Our women's league just started, so our local players have been just training with us. But the overseas players have been in season. It's been football for them. But to be honest with you, it's not really a big difference because our local players have understood the process now. So even though they've just been training with us, there's the off days. There's no off days, right? So they're in the gym. You have girls that's giving up their lunch breaks to go to the gym. When we're not training with the national team, with the women's league started, they're training with their club. So if I'm honest, we have some girls where it's national training Monday, club matches or club training Tuesday, futsal on Wednesday, national training on Thursday, matches on Friday, 7:30 Saturday morning session, and rest day Sunday. So as much as the overseas girls are doing, we are trying to match that with the local players so that the gap isn't that big when they come back. So when we look at these numbers, is the numbers that JB is talking about. When we look at those numbers, yes, the overseas players tend to have higher numbers. So, I sat down and sent my players their numbers from the other night. Sierra Fisher, who's a local player, had higher distance numbers than Ajaya or Jaden. Samira Lodaro had the second or third highest numbers. So that's exciting for me because it lets me know that our local players are almost, or if not at the same level or higher than the overseas players. So that shows me that we're headed in the right direction. And, as far as conditioning, there's the other little pieces too. But if you didn't know, you wouldn't know that this group of players is overseas and this group of players is in Bermuda. And it's a good thing. I'm not saying that the overseas players are lowering their level. The local players are raising the bar and they're raising their level and they're pushing each other to do better. So we have some things that we have normalized with this group, and they understand that. They know that in training, it's no time to be just going through the motions. I tell them, and I always say, guys, whenever you step on the field, it's an audition. So every training session, this player is pushing this player. And now they realize we have numbers now too. We haven't always had it, but we do have numbers. So whereas you're maybe not pushing to make the plane, you're pushing to make the starting 11 now. So it's a different kind of push because they know that this is now a team where no spot's guaranteed.
Sure. But what we're going to do, we're going to take our first commercial break. When we come back, Jay, you have the first question. We'll be right back.
Putting down the weapons.
You seeing this? John Barrett & Son is bringing us something fresh and exciting for the new year. Vi Antioxidant Infusion Beverage. Vi delivers the natural antioxidant benefits of the coffee fruit in glorious combination with a variety of exotic fruit flavors, with only 1 gram of sugar and 10 calories per bottle. The folks at Vi are inviting us on a world tour through these amazing flavors. Brasilia blueberry, Zambia Bing cherry, Costa Rica clementine, Malawi mango, Panama peach, Ipanema pomegranate, Kupang strawberry kiwi, and more. Lindo's. Why go anyplace else?
I'm also thankful and grateful because my greatest value of my life is my legacy.
But why are you doing it?
I feel
I'm supposed to do it. I was put here to be here, to do what I'm doing right now. Once I see somebody moving, it's the greatest joy for me. There's a little person being born.
I am thankful that people have given me the trust, for me to empower them, from my players to my family to friends. And that's what I'm thankful for. I'm thankful that people have allowed me and trusted me to be in their life.
Welcome back. Jay? Gotta unmute.
Guys, this is a question for both of you. Keita, you just mentioned about the rigorous training schedule you've had, or these players have had with games and training. But going forward now, we're going into a tournament setting, and it's a little bit it's a different beast as I'm playing 1 or 2 games a week compared to a tournament setting, to keep that intensity up and get the intensity right per game. Can you tell us some of the challenges with both your teams to get that right? Because I think, obviously you want your players at the optimum strength, but also rest through a tournament is very critical.
So for us, we are, as I said, my girls, either training with me or training with their clubs or playing matches. So we are actually going to finish. Our last session is going to be on the 24th of June, and we are giving them the following week off completely. We travel that following Monday to Bournemouth for training camp. We arrive in Bournemouth on the 4th. We have a match on the 5th. I could be wrong, 5th or 6th. And then we fly out on the 8th, and then our game is on the 9th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. So we have incorporated the rest, relax and reset. So we're going to go hard. So even for now, these next few weeks, we only have games. So we had a training session. Now we have games up until we leave, because they are still playing with their clubs. They are still training with their clubs. I kind of tried to pull the plug on that, but I got a little kickback, which is fine. I just got to pray every day that, I've lost 2 players. I have 1 player that hasn't trained for a while playing in the league, and then I lost a player playing in the league, and then I got a player who got injured last night, and I don't know if I have to find a replacement until tomorrow. So right now for us, that's our scary part. Our scary moment is now these girls playing in the league. So we are definitely going to rest, relax, and reset the week of the 26th, I want to say, and then go into our training session before the match, play our match, and then that will be our restart for the tournament.
Yeah, for us, it's very similar as well. We're not going to be resting as much as far as what Coach Keita's doing with her team, but we want to keep the intensity high, because what I don't want is us to be a little bit lethargic going into the tournament. But for both of us, we have 3 games in 3 days, which means we're going to need all the legs that we can possibly get to maintain that. And then you add on what we want to do as far as getting to the semifinals and the finals. That's 5 days and basically 5 games in basically 1 week. So a lot of it is building the strength and endurance now. So actually, these boys just left me, a couple minutes before we started here, during the strength and conditioning phase of it. So making sure that they're prepared physically for what was going to be a demanding, couple of days of games. But within that, like Coach Keita said, you want to have your rest periods. Within that, where you make sure that they're actually getting rest, they're going to the physio, they're doing what they have to do, they're eating right, those types of things as well. And one of the tougher things is not being able to control situations like the games that are being done outside of our control as far as the practice place. So it's about balancing a lot of that. And so, for instance, even with our strength and conditioning, we finished with a little fun. We did a little rowing event. So we had, guys putting up money to challenge for who's going to win and all that type of stuff. But things that are fun, the things that, they want to get into, but they're still getting a little bit of work in it as well.
Sure. What do you guys know about the opponents you will face at this year's Island Games? I'll start with you, Keita.
I played 2 out of the 3. We did some homework. We're trying to find. I got a bunch of people trying to find any kind of footage on these players, on these teams. It's difficult. You know, we're understanding that the Jersey players are kind of out of the UK. Hitra, I want to say is either Swedish or Norwegian, and then the other ones are the Swedish or Norwegian. So we know that they're coming out of these places. We did lose to Hitra in 2007, or Alan, one of them, and then we beat the other one in 2013 to win the gold. So we do know that it's not going to be like a walk in the park. We know that we have to go to work. I found a little bit of footage from the last Island Games with Olan, but it's not enough to really go on, and we just have to play. We have to, you know, it's been a battle, because I love the fact that the boys are getting to do that strength and conditioning piece. But unfortunately for us, we're our hands are tied, because you have to work in. It's so much you can do. It's a 72-hour window, and you know, some got players that they just had a full-on futsal session. So I mean, that was the strength and conditioning piece. It was a lot of fun, and you know, but again, tomorrow we have a game against the under-15 boys, so having to balance one of them. So tomorrow they're going to get strength and conditioning in the game, you know, and then Friday I have a bunch of them that's got to turn around and play in the women's league, you know. And so that's the challenging piece for me, is even if I have footage on these teams, I still have to make sure that my players are in a position to play against them. We're going to have to play our football. So sometimes you're not going to get any footage. Sometimes you're not going to get any information on a team. But if your team is prepared, and if they are in the right space, then it doesn't matter who we play.
No, John?
Yeah, no, it's very similar for us. So Aaron Denkins in particular has been the man on the research trail, and like Greenland we played before. So I mean, that's years ago. You're not going to get much footage on who the actual players are. So that's the biggest challenge, is we don't know who the individual players are. We don't know the main threats. We don't know who we can pick on as someone that, you know, maybe a chink in their armor. But like Coach Keita said, it's about us, and for the men in particular, it's about the longer journey. So a lot of this Island Games is preparation for the Nations League, and seeing how many of these boys can start making those steps to be part of the senior group. So there's a bigger picture to all of it, as far as, you know, the last year or so, and preparing and finding out who's where, seeing who we can get back in, seeing where these players are physically and mentally. It's a long game at it. So the Island Games, I think, is the first phase of that longer journey when it comes to the men's side of it as well. So making sure that we can focus on ourselves has been my biggest conversations with them, and that's what we can control. All the other parts we can't control. We can't control the field, the refs, what the other players are doing, but we can't control ourselves.
Jay? Unmute.
I don't give much away, guys, but I'm pretty sure you guys have, because you have a lack of information about these teams, is trying to put enough tools in the toolbox as possible when it comes to players, right? In case you have to go to plan B, C, D, and maybe E, right? Depending on the competition. And what may be a starting 11 today might not be the starting 11 for the next game. Right. I'm pretty sure you guys are, you know, trying to get as many tools in as possible. Now, don't say nothing, because I don't want, if they do see this interview, I don't want to get on to. But Joan Barry, you mentioned something just now. Some of the players that is in the squad right now have made their debut in the men's team, the men's senior team. How hungry are the ones who haven't made it yet? Because once again, this is the platform now that, you know, all eyes are on them to be pushing the guys who are in the men's team now. When we look at this squad here, who's going to be pushing for those places?
Yeah, no, I think it's actually been, I guess, a benefit to our team, what happened in the last Nations League games for the men. So Jai being one of them that got in, Harry Twite's another one that got in. Like, these guys getting into the team and actually playing significant minutes has sparked a lot of the rest of the younger guys and saying, hey, you know, that guy got in. I'm not too far off from that. I'm right around the corner. So the vibe that I'm getting from our younger players is the opportunities there now. And a few guys have taken that opportunity. Why can't I be one of them? And so this is actually kind of pushed the group to push each other to say, look, well, we as a group need to start knocking on this door, as opposed to one person or two people knocking on the door. So it's definitely benefited us as coaches, me and myself, Scott Morton, Sergio Goda, and Aaron Dankins, as far as looking to push a team, but that team's already pushing itself. So now it's about guiding the team more so than pushing them, because they have a little carrot that's already in front of them with that space in the national team right now.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it. I mean, when we're looking at our men's national team, we know it's going to be going through a transition. I mean, probably in a transition now, even and going forward, because we have some older players, right, who are time out. So there's a lot of opportunity. You mentioned opportunity, and this is key. I mean, we talked about this many times. That's all we've ever wanted for these players, was the opportunity, right? And now we actually get to see some opportunity.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, some players will take the opportunity, and some are going to miss out on it. And that's the truth of the matter. That's what football is about. And so our job now is to put enough confidence in them, because these are good players. They already kind of know they're good, but they're not got the confidence built of I've made it yet. And that's what they need, is a little challenge and a little push to say, I'm in that door. I'm actually in the window. Let me just put my feet in. So that's kind of where we are right now with a lot of these young men. Both abroad and in Bermuda. So two of the guys that have really been sparks are guys that are playing locally, Blaze and Cash Hall. But those two in particular, they've come in head down, they've worked hard, and they earned a spot. It's not necessarily that they were given a spot. They've showed in the league this year how good they can be, and they've come to training. And their job right now is to prove that wasn't just because it's in Bermuda. They can do that same thing on a bigger stage.
You mentioned those two. There was a lot of talk about when they were called up to the senior man's team and chose not to take part. But I'm glad to see them in the national team full, only because the more guys that have been abroad playing at a higher level, when they bring that knowledge back, they only help us all. In the way we approach games, the way our preparation is during games and after games, because they've been in the environment. Yeah, they've lived in the environment. So yeah, and Coach Keita, clearly you have a few of those girls that have already brought back that from universities, from colleges, that has helped, I guess, mold your ambitions of what you wanted the national football team for the women to look like. So someone like, okay, so Alani lives in D1 school, she's won championships with the school. What does her presence in a team, not necessarily on the field, but in the team, what does her presence do for the rest of the girls around?
I mean, I'll share a quick story with you guys on that. We traveled to Baltimore, I think it was 2021. And because of COVID and all that kind of stuff, like we had been out of connection, and and she was doing her thing, and she was also looking to be scouted. And so we had some matches, and she just brings a different level, right? So she brought her different level, and there were some things that were said that in hindsight, I'm glad she said it, because as you said, what does she bring? It was nothing personal. It was, I have girls as a player, for school, for the country, professionally, and you guys need to step up. And if I'm being honest, whether it's the reason for the turnaround, the reason for the work ethic, whatever it is, I wish I could go back to that day when she made those statements, because it was hard to take initially by a lot of the players. And they and themselves have said, like, you know what? This is where we are now. This is where we're heading. But she was already there. You know what I mean? Where she had gone from 1 to 10, they were still hanging around in 3 and 4 in that area. And so at the end of the day, we have more players now that have the Leilani mindset. Like, these girls are working. They are really, really working hard to bring that out. So, of course, she's a player that stands out, but she's also now got more players around her that can help her stand out even more.
Mm.
So it's exciting. I mean, our team is an under 23 team, obviously. So we have, the captain Ava Fazoni, we have Carla Bringer, we have Sierra Fisher, we have Vicky. We have older players in our team. We are using it as well as our Nations League preparation. But I'm so excited. Like I have never been this excited. I've never been where every single day and every single night it's what more can we do? What more? Like I'm on Player Tech looking at these players' numbers and what they're putting up in training and who's beating the average and who is slacking. And, I'm looking up, how we're trying to play. I'm researching this information. I'm picking Maurice's brain. I'm talking to, Don Vickers and the coaches. But it's exciting and I'm happy and I'm going to be happy because I'm going to be picking John Barrett's brain too. So, I think it's avoiding me for whatever reason, but I'm going to find him. All right. I'm going to be picking his brain because I want to learn from these people. You know what I mean? And I would love to share what I have as well with them, because we're heading in the right direction as a country. This is exciting. Like I probably was more excited when I saw his team selection than mine, but no, to see some of the names in his team was absolutely amazing for me. And I'm excited. I've never traveled. We've never had two teams, a male and a female team travel at the same time. So, unfortunately I probably won't get to see any of their games, but they hopefully come and support ours because we play later than they do. But, it's just going to be exciting to just be in this space with these people and continuing to grow with Nations League coming up. Like this is pre-Nations League preparation.
Sure. But we're going to take another commercial break. When we come back, Jay, you're back up.
I'm also thankful and grateful because my greatest value of my life is my legacy.
But why I do it? I feel supposed to do it. I was put here to be here, to do what I'm doing right now. Once I see somebody moving, it's the greatest joy for me. There's a little person being born.
I am thankful that people have given me the trust, for me to empower them, from my players to my family to friends. And that's what I'm thankful for. I'm thankful that people have allowed me and trusted me to be in their life.
Putting down the weapons.
You seeing this?
Here's one of our favorite feature brands, true veterans of the food awareness movement. Bob's Red Mill, the U.S. leading miller of organic whole grain foods. Only whole grains have the entire value developed during growth. And once you try them, you know that this is the way food was intended to be. Try Bob's Red Mill blanched almond, whole wheat pastry, and artisan bread flours, and 1-to-1 gluten-free baking flour, unsweetened shredded coconut, gluten-free homemade wonderful bread mix, and a variety of rolled oats. Lindo's. Why go anyplace else?
And welcome back, Jay.
Hey guys, just prior to the break, you guys had mentioned that this tournament was be a preparation for the Nations League. Well, let's get into expectations then for both of you. What is the expectations for your teams?
I know my team's expectations is fine. Like that's how we're approaching everything. So even when we're talking about the small detailed stuff, as far as the workouts, we're trying to win. We're trying to beat each other in cards right now. So we're doing a lot of that. Conversation of the mentality and making sure that we have a shift in the mentality of not being a small nation and acting like a big nation, I guess, is one of the things we discuss is changing the mentality. We have to be aggressive. We can't be passive. So a lot of the Bermuda hospitality that we've done in the past. We're trying to get rid of that. So for all the guy at the halfway line, if that means that he's not going to get the scoring opportunity, and I'm perfectly fine with that. We have to have a little bit of nastiness to us. So our expectation is to win. Like people want to put some fluff around it. That's what it is. Everybody comes to win. The difference is, can we execute and can we do the things that we have to do to win? And that's the second phase of it, is being able to execute those things. But again, the mentality has to be that we'll go in there to try and win, we'll go in there to try and get some victories, and we'll go in there to try and improve so that we can continue the journey into another phase.
Coach?
Yeah, absolutely. We're the senior women's team. JB might get a little blind. He's the under 23 coach, but we're the senior women's team. The only expectation, the only result is a win, and we have to make sure that the players understand that that's what we're going to do. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And as JB mentioned, execution. Like, you understand, they know how the players know how we're defending. The players know how we want to attack. And that's the things that we have to do. And, I said to him the other day, and it might be me thinking that we're bigger than we are. I said, the difference between us and some of those bigger countries is that we are able to do the same things that they were able to. We have good technical skill. We have good tactical abilities. I said the only difference is that they do the same things that we do long. They do them for a longer period of time. Whereas once we get tired, our technique goes out the window. Our tactics go out the window. We're in survival mode. We have to get beyond that now. And my players understand that. And I'm sure the guys understand that too. We're no longer just playing games for 20 minutes. We're not. We're not going to be known as the country that, so many times analysis have come back, Bermuda's been in and out, done well for the first 20 minutes. Get them past the 20-minute mark, and now go at them. Save your energy for 20 minutes, and then at the 21st minute, go at them. Well, we're beyond that now, and the players know that that's the expectation. We have to play for longer periods. We have to do the things we know how to do, and the things that we do in the first 20 minutes, we got to do that for 75, 80 minutes now. And that's the only expectation. If you're not able to do it, and I can say that now, I have somebody on the bench that can do it. So come sit by me, and I'll put the other person on the field to do the job. And that's what's pushing my players.
Yeah. I think your story about Leilani earlier is a key to it, meaning, and I've known Leilani for years, but the expectation that she brought to the team is the expectation that we as coaches now need to make on every player. Is that it's an expectation once you put your jersey on and once you come to play, it's an expectation that you're out there giving 100 the whole time and not taking breaks and not taking time off and being there for the team. So the expectation, I think, has shifted a little bit from us as coaches, one, and then I know from the boys that I have, their expectation of each other has shifted as well. That they're looking at each other in the eyes and saying, no, that's not good enough. Like, we need better. So that's big.
And John, I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things we have in this country when it comes to sports is egos, and managing the egos of those players who have played at the higher level with the players who have been playing primarily domestically. How have you been working on that to make sure that it doesn't come across as an ego? It comes across as, I want you to be a better player.
It's a balance, though. So I think you handle every player differently. So some players have that ego, but some players also need to have that arm around their shoulder and either boost the ego or calm the ego. So Andrew Bascom, and this is one thing I always kind of live by. It works in my teaching profession, probably more than the coaching profession. But one of the first things he told me was, as a coach, you guys are actually servants. Now, whenever you think about a servant, you think about somebody that's underneath you. But the truth is, sometimes the best servants are the kings doing stuff for the country, right? And so for me, my job is to serve my players in various ways. Some of them need a tough hand, some of them need a gentle hand, some of them it's different things. So again, that's more of the management style that I utilize. And because of that, I'm able to talk to different players differently and hopefully get them to mesh as good as they can. Is it going to be perfected? No, because players have their own attitudes, players have their own thoughts, and a lot of that comes into play. But how do I manage the group with those players is probably one of the harder things. especially when you have players that have seen a certain level, and then you have some players that haven't seen that level yet. But the good thing is the majority of this team has actually been to a level that was good. Even the players that you say are the quote unquote Bermuda League players, they've been somewhere before. So this is not their first rodeo. They've seen things before that are structured. And so my job is to not come to practice unstructured, because as soon as they see that, they say it ain't serious. So when my players come to my training sessions, all the curtains are laid out. Everything's done. And so I don't want you to think of nothing else but to play, because again, I'm the servant to you. My job is to make your job as easy as possible. So that's something that I'm always going to live by. And so far, it's assisted me in that sense of being able to speak to certain guys in different ways and get the same respect level for the group out of that.
Yeah. And Coach Keita.
Two things. Can I speak to that?
Yeah. Well, I was going to elaborate on the question, because 8 years ago you didn't have this abundance of players and so forth, so you had to change your total approach on how you speak to these players, how you know. So go ahead.
Well, I mean, I love this servant thing, because I've always said, not just us as coaches, but the staff. Like, we work for the players. Right, they are the ones who perform on the field. It's our job to make sure that we get them to that level. But back on the Eagles and the Leilani piece, Martin, and I mean, his service is such a miss within the. But he was there for that whole thing, and from the moment it happened, him and I, we weren't butting heads, but I wasn't agreeing with what he was saying, because I was feeling what the players who had to. So, we all knew that initially Leilani was like, I'm going to represent America. That's my girl. And so this was her first time actually coming to represent the women. And it was almost like, you haven't even cared about us all this time. And now all of a sudden you're coming in. And so that's how some of the players had taken it. And from the very first moment she bought it, he said, Coach, no, it's a mindset. It's not personal. She doesn't care about the fact that was the case. She cares about, if she's going to be a part of this, and at that time we were supposed to go play in November, if she's going to be a part of this group in November, players are going to step up. Players are going to do better. And so that's why I said to you, I wish that I could go back to that moment. Although we have arrived at that mentality, if I could go back to that moment, maybe our last tour with Jamaica and them, it might have been a little different. But the players have adjusted. The players have bought into that, right? And so we don't really have that ego type, that at all. It's yes, you still have, I can say this to this player, like I could go in on this player in training, but I kind of have to rub this one in the shoulders and kind of give them the same harsh message, but a little softer, So whereas in the players, like Leilani did it, I don't care how it's come across to you. Ava might have said the same thing to the players, a little softer. Right. Yeah. So that's within every team. Like, there are players that I'm gonna say this, and you're gonna come out the next day on the field and just go at it, and then the other player is gonna climb up and be embarrassed, like, oh my God, But that's part of coaching.
Sure. Jay?
Coach, just tell me how important it is for our young athletes to know that this is a platform not only for but also could be, you're put in the window for your career. We've seen a lot of these tournaments where our local athletes have gotten professional contracts out of them. What is that talk like going into some of these tournaments, saying, hey, this is, you're in the shopping window. You'd be surprised who's going to be watching this. How are those talks with your players?
For me, that's always the case. It's not even just this tournament. Like, that's always the case. Like I said, every time you're on the field, it's an audition. We could be playing at BFA. You don't know who's riding across Clyde Bass, who may look and say, hey, I saw, you know what I mean? So every time, like, missing opportunities, unacceptable. Just going through the motions, unacceptable. So every time, whether training or playing in a match, you are in an audition. So it's always an opportunity for someone to see you and to offer you something. So it's never a time where, okay, we're just going to play this team, this country. Everything's streamed now. So You could be playing a team that's just entered into the regional tournament, somebody at the very low end. And but if you go out there and be like, yeah, well, we're beating this team 5 or 6-0, I'm just going to go through the motions. That coach wants to see how you're managing yourself because you're on top of this team. So it doesn't matter whether it's Island Games, Nations League, a pickup game. I'm saying to them, you have to go hard every single time. Somebody is watching. And it doesn't matter who they are or what they can offer. But somebody's always watching.
John? Got to mute.
Sorry, so no, I was saying 100% what Coach Keita said. So nothing more than that. I call it updating your resume. So you're always updating your resume. You're always putting something else on the table for somebody to have a look at some point. So it's a constant, and that's the life of a football player anyway. It should be a constant evolve. You're growing all the time, and I think that's the very position. That's what you're supposed to do. So. I'm gonna be honest with you, the conversation of everybody is watching you, I really don't have, because my conversation is you do the little bits right, then people will figure it out. So I'm more worried about the play. And there's extra stuff that comes when you're doing the right things and the little things correctly.
Definitely. We're going to take our final commercial break. When we come back, we'll wind up with the coaches of the Bermuda men's and women's football team heading to the Island Games. We'll be right back.
It seems everyone knows someone who's lactose intolerant or just avoiding dairy products. And fortunately, there's a growing array of delicious and nutritious alternatives. Pacific Natural Foods have been doing things their own way simply and sustainably for over a quarter century, making non-dairy beverages with the finest possible ingredients right down to the packaging. Try Pacific Natural Original and Vanilla Hemp Milk and Almond Original Plant-Based Beverage, all sweetened or unsweetened, and low-sodium organic vegetable or chicken broth. Lindo's, why go anyplace else?
I'm also thankful and grateful because my greatest value of my life is my legacy.
But why I do it? I feel supposed to do it. I was put here to be here, to do what I'm doing right now. Once I see somebody moving, it's the greatest joy for me. There's a little person being born.
I am thankful that people have given me the trust, for me to empower them, from my players to my family to friends, and that's what I'm thankful for.
Putting down the weapons.
You seeing this?
And welcome back. Well, we have the two teams, and they've been running across the bottom of the screen since we started. We want to wish you two all the best, you and your coaching staff, as well as the players. It's a new adventure, a new task, but as you've indicated, it's in preparation for the Nations League ventures that will kind of put us in another space, how we finish in that. So want to wish you all the best. Jay, any parting words for them?
Yeah, actually, well, before we close up, and Errol, we've been around long enough to see these two play, and now in their coaching capacity. So let's lighten it up a bit for you two guys. So let's think about it like this. Name a player in your team that has a temperament of when you was playing, and name a player in your team that has a temperament as you as a coach.
I'll say Anaze Aswood has my temperament as a player. He's relaxed, but he can be very aggressive when the button's been pushed. As a coach, I would say joy being. I like to have a lot of fun with the players, so I truly believe that it's still a game that you play when you're a kid. I want the players to feel like that when they're playing and not feel the stress, because it can be a lot of stress that's brought on by expectations, by what you're trying to accomplish. Again, if it's fun, usually, then you enjoy it a little bit more, and usually you play a little bit better. So this is one of those players that can be very serious, but loves to have a little laugh and a little joke along with it. So maybe that as a coach.
For me, probably as a player, and I will have to match it with my position, I would say a Deshae. And a lot of it is to do with when it doesn't come off, I get really, really frustrated. But when it does, it's magical. And as a coach, as a coach, I would have to say Ava, mainly because she actually acts as that role on the field, of making sure that everything is going according to plan. Kind of keeping everybody in check, and just making sure that what it is we're trying to execute is actually being executed. And also, having a bit of fun at times as well. Understanding when it's this the focus time, and understanding when it's not time to be serious. So that would have to be the two players. I mean, there's other players in my team that have different characteristics that I had, so I'm not so good, but there's ones I know how to manage. There's ones better, but yeah, that would be the two I will pick.
All right. Well, again, all the best, folks. We'll be back next Wednesday with another edition of the Eisenstadt Sports Show. Good luck, guys. To you and to you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.